Well, hello everyone, and welcome to my newest video on painting this beautiful purple, and this is a bearded iris, so I love how ruffly it is and pretty it is. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this little lesson. I'm doing this in my water-soluble Cobra brand oils, and to make it easy for you, I have written down the different paint colors there. So up here you can't see it, but I've got out some Payne's gray, white, titanium white, a little bit of cad yellow deep up here. So if that gets cut off from the camera, that's what's up there. I've got out some water, and I have in this little tray here, I put out a little bit of this water mixable glazing medium, just in case I need it to spread a little easier. I'm more familiar with just using like Terp and my regular oil paint, so I use that a little bit to help get this first layer spread. So, but I don't use it during my painting, otherwise it would get a little too messy. All right, so I want to start off with just something to cover this white. Oh, and this is one of those ampersand gesso boards. So I'm just going to get a little bit of that glazing medium, and I'm going to put it down on this is a glass palette, which I also really like. And I'm going to start off by using some of this burnt umber. And I've got this madder red color. I want to put that in the background, just to add a little bit of that to it. So I'm just going to get some of that in there, and I'll kind of leave that area up here. I'll leave it a little bit cleaner and whiter, because that's where the kind of the lightest part of the flower is going to go. So I'll kind of leave that a little bit with less paint underneath, just so I don't have to later deal with the paint mixing in. I really want that to be really radiant. So I'm just going to mix that in. I might even add a little bit of this, just a little more dab of that mixing. And I'm going to add a little bit of sap in there now, and some of that madder red, a little bit of that medium, and just sort of dab that around. Okay, once you get enough of that going, I have these Viva paper towels, and I'm just gonna wipe some of that off. I also sometimes really love the texture that it makes, like these beautiful kind of lines and everything, and I actually don't even mind that showing through later in my painting, so don't worry so much if it doesn't look perfect. Those are the things that later are kind of make your painting more interesting. So just wipe away. And this isn't the exact shape, obviously. I just kind of, sometimes I just leave that more blank so that my colors are going to show up good. Okay, so once you have that done, just go ahead, and I'm just going to rinse my brush. And another thing I've learned using these water-soluble oils is I don't want too much water left in my brush, because that also can create a little bit of a problem for me. And I'm going to just take a little bit of this magenta. See, that water drives me crazy. And I'm just going to mix a little bit of this purple color I've got here. And I'm looking at my reference photo, and I'm just gonna sort of sketch out the angles I see of where the kind of the purple petals go. So I'm looking at these sorts of angles in here, like this, where this little, it's like a separate feature from this bottom part. So I kind of look at that. I'm going to put that in and then draw this and this. So make sure I have enough room for everything as well. And my iPad battery is really low, so I have to keep tapping the screen while it charges. That's one of the things about having teenagers, is they don't ever charge my iPad after they use it. Anyhow, so I'm going to keep going here and just sort of put in those little ruffles, and I'm looking at that angle there, and then this kind of very beautiful kind of design, like almost like one of those flamenco dancer type dresses, only kind of upside down. It kind of goes up, very ruffly, you know. And so I'm just gonna put in some of those ruffly edges there. Make sure I have room for everything. I mean, this is one of those flowers you could really do on a large canvas. It could be humongous, really. It has so much detail. That's kind of what I like about them. I enjoy that drama. Okay, so I'm just putting these lines in, kind of making sure I get the full picture in there. And of course, if you sell your paintings, you'll know that people really don't want the frame to cut off the flower or the painting, so I try to leave a little room, even though I usually paint all my paintings right off the edge of the canvas or the board. I just think it looks better, but yeah, I do get flack for that sometimes. So okay, so now I'm gonna go, and I see a lot of these kind of dark blues and everything in the shadow, so I'm gonna get some of this cobalt blue. I'm gonna mix it into that pile, and I'm gonna put some of that real dark kind of blue in there right away. Wherever I kind of see some of those dark blues, I want to get them in there. You can even squint your eyes down when you look at a flower like this, and you'll see the shapes and you'll see things in it that if you just stared at it, you know, you would miss. So make sure to really squint and take a look when you're painting. And I look at it as a bunch of, you know, shapes. Don't look at it and go, oh, I can't paint an iris, it's too hard. You know, just don't think of it as an iris even. Just say, oh, there's a darker shape and there's a lighter, you know, there's a lighter shape. Just getting some of that blue in there, and I'm not using any medium or anything. This is just the water mixable oil, and I'm just putting a thin layer of that blue mixed in with that purple, and there's some of that magenta in it, but because you'll see later how I finish it off with the white, that it really will just pop out that color. So now I see there's quite a bit of pink in the sunlight here, so I'm going to add some of that magenta straight in there. And right now it looks confusing, but it'll start to make sense. Add some more blue when I add white. So far I haven't added any white. This is just the back of the canvas that I didn't put any background color in. And I want to make a mark for that yellow, where that yellow is going to go. So I'm going to use some of this transparent yellow oxide in here and just put a bit of that yellow in there. And also there's some of that kind of red in there, so I'm going to put that in. And then I'm going to start adding white so you can see a bit of like what I'm doing here. So I've got just some titanium white, nothing else on my brush. And you could just go and add it into that underpaint there. And just kind of put in some of those marks. And add a little bit of that magenta into it and some cobalt, maybe some more of that purple. And I'm kind of going with the direction of the flower there. And I'll leave where the shadow is. Just gonna add a little more pink into that mix. That's just some of the magenta and a bit of that cobalt and white. And then I'm gonna go in and get a little bit of that cobalt blue and get some of that in the shadow. So I'm gonna, and kind of where these ruffles are, I see a lot of that blue. And the trick is, you don't want to get into doing everything exact, because the photo is so, it's a very complex, you know, reference photo really, because there's so much going on. So I don't want to get overwhelmed with the details there. And I see a lot of that kind of blue up in here. So I'm gonna kind of go again. I'm looking at the way the flower goes, and I'm following sort of the way the, whoops, you know, the way these lines are going here, and swooping, you know, like this. I'm kind of following, trying to kind of follow that with my brush strokes. And I'm gonna get some more cobalt blue and really add some dark shadow colors in here. So many different kind of lines, and just kind of pick out some. Put a few of those kind of highlights in there. And I'm gonna go, and the background has a lot of green and everything. I wanna just put a little bit of that in, just to also give my eye some contrast. So I'm gonna get some of this sap green, and I added some of this burnt umber to it, just something to darken it. And I want to put in some of the darks, and then when I do get some of the highlights in there, the flower will really, it will really pop. Before I get my bright highlights in there, I want to get the dark kind of in there. Okay. Alrighty, so it looks kind of like a big mess right now, but hopefully it'll all make sense in a sec. Okay, I'm gonna switch to a smaller brush. This is, wait, that's number 4 too. Oh, this is a number 4 too, but it just looks smaller. I'll just use this. And I'm gonna add a few lighter greens. So I'm gonna use that Cad Yellow Medium and some sap green. And put a few different colors of green in there, especially and I might even use, I like this turquoise, and I'm gonna add some white, some of that turquoise in there, and especially for some of these I'm still getting used to these water-soluble oils. I kind of still find it a little tricky compared to the oil, but that's like everything once you get used to it. Just putting a few, you know, different green marks in there just to mix it up a little. Okay. Once I get those in like that, I'll sometimes, just to loosen them up, I'll take the edge of like my paper towel here, and I'm just gonna scruff up some of those backgroundy leaves just to, it'll soften them up and make them look less like just, you know, lines everywhere, and it kind of combines with the other layer you did, and it just looks more artistic. I just kind of scruff them up a little. There. It was looking too, they look too like, you know, laid on like bricks. So now I'm gonna go back to my flower, and I'm gonna get some of this white, and there's enough paint. I'm just gonna add a little bit of this to the purple and the blue mix just to lighten it up. And I can start adding some of these. So the real prominent one I want to show is sort of in here where your eye is going to get drawn to the center. And there's like a lot of ruffles every which way, but just kind of, you got to be, I feel like you kind of look at your reference photo and follow where the light's going, and just kind of go with it, you know, and see what happens. You're just looking at those. Swoops every which way, and then there's this other side here. And then it goes into the shadow, so I'll take a little bit more of the cobalt blue here. Kind of goes in. Like this. So now you've got some of that going on, and then I'm going to go back in and just sort of really emphasize a few things just so that there's kind of like a clear sense that there's those two major petals kind of swooping in there. And don't overdo it, even if it looks kind of crazy, a little bit messy. Just try not to over fix it. Leave it and then, you know, come back to it. I'm not exactly, you know, thrilled with it, but you know, I haven't painted an iris in a while, so I'm not gonna worry too hard. I'm gonna just kind of keep moving here. I want to work on some of the highlights over here now, so I'm going to get some of that pink and a little bit of the cad yellow deep, and I can put a little bit of that glowing center area there, and then kind of deepen, warm up that pink a little. And I kind of like the bolder brush stroke, so don't worry too hard about, it's almost like you need to challenge yourself not to do as many brush strokes as you normally do with this one. Okay, and then I really want to get that frilly edge in there, so I'm going to get some of that cobalt blue and white and just sort of get something that's really kind of light here. And I'm just going to follow that along a little, adding those little bright highlight. Same with over here. Like that. And over in the shadows there, I'm going to really make sure I get some of this cobalt blue, a little bit of this magenta, and I want to get that in there. And as you go, you'll kind of lose some of the real dark shadows, so you can go back and just, you know, even just use this purple and go back and really kind of put your darks back in. I even have this madder red is really dark. I want to go and make sure that the dark spots are really there, so that when I go to put everything in the center, it's going to really pop. Same with this, like these areas kind of got lost. The shadows got lost. Go back in and put those shadows back. Same here, just kind of make sure those values in the inside are a little darker than the outside. And then kind of go, I'm going to do the same, just kind of go along and kind of ruffle those edges up a little more. like being a cake decorator. I feel like it's like icing right now. There's the paint's kind of thick. And sometimes I'll put a little bit of that pink up in there. Just kind of continues that color up through there. Now you can go in and just might put a little highlight right there just to really draw your eye to that area. So now you can, you can switch to a smaller brush and you want to work on that center piece. So I'll get some, I'm going to mix some of this cad yellow deep and that yellow oxide. I didn't have any yellow ochre to put out, so that's why I have these colors kind of. You just kind of have to go with the flow sometimes. So I have, going to put in those little marks for the center, and so I'll use some of this alizarin also and the cad yellow deep to make kind of a red in there. Like that. And then you can go, once you have that layer down, like I say, you could use yellow ochre because it's a really good shadow color for yellow. Like I find in flowers, it has enough kind of green in it and everything, and it's dull. And then you can go with your bright yellow and just kind of put a few of those little details, and then it ends up going to white. So just kind of switch to white and put some of that white in there, and then you've got all those little white kind of stripes that go in there. I would get a larger brush so you don't have to. I'll go with this brush here, and you could just kind of take your brush, and I'm looking at the reference photo. And kind of mark off some of that. Those little details. And there's a little bit kind of coming down here. Like that. And then if you want to shape some of those that you don't, if they're too long or whatever, you can just use the paint underneath to kind of blend it in. But I kind of like it the way it is. I'm not going for, perfect realism. So, and then there's you could put there's some in that flower there, and then there's some in the shadow, so I'll get a little bit of this blue just to show a few in that one. But I wouldn't get too worried about the details in these ones, just the main one is good enough. And then you can always get some of your background color and kind of cut back into it a bit if you want to shape it a bit. Just kind of remember to wipe your brush in between, but you can kind of just shape it back in. And I'm just going to go now and put in a little white with a little bit of this cad yellow medium and kind of really get a highlight on the edge there. Some of these real bright. Just a tiny bit of yellow and white will make a real brilliant white. So just kind of looking at my reference photo and And each time you put a bright highlight like that, wipe your brush down so you really get that clean. So you get that real bright white. And I want to do the same. I want to add some of this white into this pink. So I have a real light, you know, bubblegum pink sort of. And I'm going to look for a few real bright. And that might be a little too light a value, so I'm going to dull it down a little more. Just put in a few of those brighter pink highlights in there. And now I want to get a little bit of this alizarin red, and I see a lot of that kind of reddish color in there. Get a little cad yellow deep and alizarin and some red in there. Go back to my purple here and just work in that shadow a bit there. Okay. All right, so now what I want to do is make sure there's a little bit of a shadow in there. Okay, I'm gonna go to the greens again, and I'm gonna get some of this turquoise, and I wanna put in a little bit of the sap. Kind of gives you this kind of bright, and then mix white into it so you get kind of that real cold, icy green. And I'll put some of those little bits of bright green, kind of, it's like an iris leaf color, I think. It's kind of like a real cool color. And then in the foreground, you can warm it up a little. Just add a little bit of that cad yellow medium, and you could put a few warmer greens. Okay, and just gonna get a little more white and Just kind of liven some of these ones up. After you've looked at it for a while, you know, you can kind of balance out your painting. This one seemed a lot bigger than this one, so just kind of soften those edges a little. I just had to fix that a little. It just seemed too small compared to the other one. And now I'm just gonna kind of blend it a little, some of those marks, so it's not, I want this to be softer in the back there, so I'm just kind of using a dry brush to sort of blend some of those edges, soften some of them, and, you know, even lose some edges. And I'm just putting in some different greens here and there. I'll put in darker greens sometimes to really make the flowers stand out in certain areas. Just different things you can do with edges, like when you put a dark next to a light, that'll create like a different, it'll be more focused, like that when you put dark next to light. So I'm just popping in a few real darks just to, you know, really make the flowers stand out. And you could even get some of your Payne's gray like that and pop in a few really dark spots just to make it like really stand out there. Okay, well, I think that just about does it. We made this iris, and you can see how I use the background to bring it out, and we learned how to kind of block it in and everything. And I will do more irises just because I like the practice of doing them. And so we'll do a different iris next time. Just let me know what color of iris you'd like me to do next time, and I'll try. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this lesson, and I'll see you in the next video.